All right, so this is the first episode of the Squiggly Cactus show. This is going to be my personal podcast. Um, so just to give you a rundown on this first episode, it's going to be kind of short, sweet, to the point, and just an introduction of myself and what I do and what this podcast is going to be. First and foremost, this podcast is just going to be just about life, really. We'll discuss certain topics from football, mostly college football, and then when basketball season comes around, we'll do college basketball. And then I'll have guests that talk about doing leather work because that's what I'm in the business of. So if this seems like something you'd really like, please join in and follow along. I really have no idea what I'm doing, so here we go. That's what they say. So to get us started, this is being recorded on 10/13. This is Thursday, October 13th. So, this weekend we got some big games coming up. We got Penn State, Michigan, which I think is going to be a really good game. Michigan hasn't played a super tough schedule by any means. And Penn State's Penn State, If you don't play Penn State like they're Penn State, you're going to get beat. And then we move on to Auburn, Ole Miss. Both pretty good teams. Ole Miss is undefeated. Auburn's 3-3. I think Ole Miss wins this, and then we move on to the other 10 o'clock game is going to be Kansas, Oklahoma. Kansas being number 19, Oklahoma being 3-3, coming off a disappointing loss last weekend. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to be back in the lineup this week. I think it's going to be a really good game. I wish Kansas had their starting quarterback Daniels, but what are you going to do? Last week the backup comes in. You got Bean. He starts out as a receiver. He threw some pretty good balls. He had a little bit of trouble late in the fourth quarter trying to get a drive going against TCU. Ended up falling short, but TCU is a good team. And then on ABC at 10 a.m. you got Iowa State, Texas. Texas is legit, and being a Kansas fan, that kind of hurts to say, but Texas is what they are. Quinn Ewers. He's as advertised. I think if Quinn Ewers doesn't get hurt in the Alabama game, we got Texas being number one because I don't think they lose. But here we are, and then we got on the Big Ten Network we got Minnesota versus 24 Illinois. Again, this is kind of a complicated matchup. Is Illinois really that good? Is their schedule just not been real complicated yet? And Minnesota, you mess around against Minnesota, you're going to get beat. That's just fact. I think this is going to be a really good matchup. I think Illinois wins this, but I Minnesota in a lot of preseason rankings was a pick to win the Big Ten or compete in the Big Ten. So don't count out Minnesota just yet. Illinois has DeVito, transferred from Syracuse last year, and he's pretty good in the pocket. He's a good pocket passer. He's a good presence back there. And then moving on to the afternoon games, you got Vanderbilt, Georgia. Vanderbilt's been struggling, but they're kind of on the come up again. I think they're heading the right direction. They can't be any worse than they were, to say the absolute least. But Georgia is just Georgia. I think Georgia wins this. The spread has it pretty bad. It says Georgia's favored in 38 points. So I don't know if it's going to be that much of a blowout, but you can get tickets for $56 if anybody's interested. And then the big game, I think the game of the week, the biggest game. We got two big games right here, but Alabama, Tennessee, number 3 versus number 6. It's in Knoxville. I'll be real honest with you. I think Tennessee wins this, and Tennessee's just been playing good. Their quarterback Hooker is just absolutely insane. Alabama, who are they going to start this week? Who knows? Their second string came in last week. He looked pretty decent at times and then looked kind of bad at times too. Obviously, if they have Bryce Young in there, they're a whole different team. Bryce is just poised and he knows what to do at the right time. I think that in all honesty, Tennessee just wins this game either, no matter which quarterback they play. But if Bryce Young doesn't start the game out, I think Tennessee might walk away with it. And then another good game is going to be Oklahoma State versus TCU, both undefeated. Oklahoma State number 8, TCU's number 13. This right here is kind of a toss-up to me. You're dealing with the Big 12. It's never going to be a low-scoring game. It's at TCU. The Big 12 fan bases are really crazy. It's hard to win on the road. Home games are, really tough to lose. I think that TCU probably wins this, but I think the winner of this probably wins the Big 12. I hope that TCU wins this because they just beat Kansas last week, and like I said, I'm a Kansas fan, so I hope that Kansas stays with it. And TCU beating Oklahoma State would definitely help them look good. The line is TCU -4 to win by 4, so I think it's gonna be. I think everybody knows it's gonna be a close game. But I like I said, I think TCU wins this. And then another good game is going to be 15 NC State versus 18 Syracuse. NC State, I've only watched one game that they've had, and it was against Texas Tech. And they played a pretty good game. Tech played a decent game there too. It was at NC State, but if that game's played in Lubbock, Tech probably wins that 100 times out of 100. Syracuse, decent team. They're 5-0. You can say, who have they played, whatever it may be. But I really truly think that this is going to be a close game. The line has Syracuse as 3.5-point favorites. I think that's a pretty good line because I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a very high scoring game. Over unders 42. I think that's probably about right. That's probably pretty close to being right. I really don't know anything about Syracuse, though. I think that I didn't think they played Wagner, Virginia, Purdue, UConn, Louisville, so just haven't really I didn't think they had played any good or tough games yet. But then we moved to James Madison in Georgia Southern. James Madison's kind of surprising some people. They moved up in competition this year to FBS, I believe, from FCS, and they've looked pretty dang good. 5-0, ranked number 25 in the country. What can I say? I'm a Nebraska fan as well. Been a long time Nebraska fan, and I've been a Kansas basketball fan, and I just made the switch to kind of bandwagon over on Kansas this year. But I seen a post today that said James Madison's been in the FBS for 5 games and is ranked, and Nebraska hasn't been ranked in 3 years. That's sad, but it's a fact. So I think James Madison blows out Georgia Southern, though. Spread says 12-point favorite for James Madison. That's probably about right. Later on in the evening, we have Clemson, Florida State. Clemson's number 4. I had a conversation with the guy the other day. This game is being played in Tallahassee. Tallahassee's a hard place to play. Good fan base, and the weather's terrible. It's just hot, humid, soggy. Nobody wants to play it. Nobody wants to go on the road to Florida State. I could see Florida State beating Clemson here, but if I had to say, I'm going Clemson. I just think that Clemson's a good team. They're not a great team. They're beatable. But if you don't go in there and play a good game against Clemson, they'll run away with it. DJ's looked pretty good for most of the year. He has there's been a couple plays that you kind of questioned his intention with the ball, but I think he's pretty good. Just whoever wins the turnover battle is probably going to win the game here. Clemson's defense, hasn't been too terrible. Florida State's had some close games, but that's just all you can ask for. They lost to NC State and Wake Forest, 2 ranked teams. They beat LSU, they beat Louisville, Boston College. I mean, there's not a lot more you can really ask for from them, but so I picked Clemson in that one. And then at 5:30, we got 22 Kentucky at home against 16 Mississippi State. This is going to be a good game. The line has Mississippi State picked. I think Kentucky wins this. And I hate to say that because I'm a Mike Leach fan. I like Mike a lot. I think he's one of the great coaches of college football. So it kind of pains me to say that, but I think Kentucky goes on and wins. Kentucky started out really good. They went on the road at Florida and won. And they didn't play anybody else. They played Youngstown State, and then they played Northern Illinois. Got some wins, and then they lost at Ole Miss, by 3 points, and then they lost to South Carolina last week. I think that this is going to be a close game, but I think in the end, I think Kentucky's just a little bit better of a team. They just their record just isn't as good because they played 2 really good teams. Moving on to the late game, we have USC Utah. This can have big implications on who wins the Pac-12. Winner of this game probably wins the Pac-12. I think that USC is a good team. They got a good. They have a strong quarterback. I think that he is kind of a little bit overhyped. I think that you can just kind of question, what he's doing with the ball at times, just like DJ Uungalele. But USC has played some pretty decent teams. Oregon State, Fresno State, Stanford. Who are they? You don't know. They're not really ranked, but those are still good teams. You can't just go at Oregon State. They win by 3. That's a competitive game. Oregon State's not a bad team by any means. They're coming off a win versus Washington State. It was at USC, but still, Washington State, still Washington State at the end of the day. I think that USC is a good team. I like their coach. He's from right down the road from here. But I really just think that Utah is going to be tough to beat. Utah plays pretty solid defense all the way around. They should have won in Florida to start the year, but it's at Florida. That's a long way, Utah to Florida. You can think of anything else. The only other loss they have is at UCLA. Tough place to play again. They lost by 10, but they beat Oregon State, Arizona State, San Diego State, Southern Utah. They got a little bit of a tough schedule coming up. They got Washington State next week, and then Arizona, which hasn't been super competitive as of late, and then later on they play Stanford and Oregon. But I really think that Utah could win this game. The spread has Utah being favorited because it's in Salt Lake City. Gonna be a little chilly, but I think that I agree with the line here. I think Utah wins this game. Back to the Clemson Florida State game. It's going to be, like I said, it's going to be one of the hottest games of the week, 70, 78 degrees. I'm sure it's going to be terribly humid too. We go back. I want to resurface to the Penn State-Michigan game. I think that Penn State is a good team. They obviously, the only true team that I think that's going to be kind of a testing stone to two teams is Purdue and or stepping stone, not testing stone. Stepping stone is Purdue and Auburn. I think that Purdue is going to be competitive in the Big Ten, and Auburn, they're an SEC school. They're going to be competitive throughout the year. Their record might say a little different, but I think they're a good team. And then they beat Northwestern 17-10. I think that Penn State has a chance to beat Michigan here, but I really just think at the end of the day it comes down to Michigan just being a little bit better of a team. J.J. McCarthy's looked really good since taking over in week 2, and they just haven't really looked back. I think that Harbaugh's going to get that team going in the right direction here pretty quick. I think so far you can't really validate them because of their schedule. But that's the top 25 for this week. I'm going to break it down a little bit better than that. I'm going to break it down kind of by conference, the big conferences anyway. Starting off with the Big 12. Right now we actually have a game, Baylor and West Virginia, 44 seconds left, and it's tied 40-40. That game is going to have big implications on the Big 12. I really hope to see West Virginia win that because, like I said, big Kansas fan. Kansas beat West Virginia. If West Virginia can go out and beat Baylor, that'd be big. Going to the Big Ten, we got Nebraska, Purdue. I think Purdue wins this game, and I don't think it's very close at all. Nebraska's just pretty much completely hit rebuild since firing Scott Frost. I hope they can get Patterson, the old TCU coach, in there. I think he'd do big things for him. But Nebraska just hasn't really been in it yet this year. They're 2-1 in the Big Ten, which is kind of crazy because they're tied for first. But, like I said, I just don't think they're all that. And then we discussed Minnesota, Illinois. We've discussed Michigan, Penn State. Maryland, Indiana. It's at Indiana. I still think Maryland's a better team. Maryland's got a good roster, and they're on the come up. The only two losses they have are to Purdue, who I think is going to do really good, the Big Ten, and Michigan, who's probably going to end up winning the Big Ten if Ohio State does not. But they beat Michigan State, and they played close game with SMU. They walked away from Buffalo and Charlotte both, but I think that Maryland's a good team, and I think Maryland's going to win this game. Tagovailoa's the quarterback for Maryland, and I think he's going to do a good job and put this game away early on. The line has them 12-point favorites. I think that's pretty close to being about right. Um, a good game is going to be Wisconsin versus Michigan State. This is going to have big implications on the Big Ten. Michigan State really needs to get a win. They are 2-4 and 0-3 in the Big Ten. I think that Wisconsin is a decent team, and I think Michigan State's a better team than the record shows. Michigan State's kind of started off the year kind of tough. They went on the road at Washington, then lost at home to Minnesota and Ohio State both, and then in between that they lost on the road at Maryland. So they dropped 4 games in a row. Obviously, Ohio State's number 3 in the country. You know what they are, so you can't hold that loss against them. But I think the Washington game, I think they could have won that game. I did watch that game. I think Washington could have or shouldn't have ran away with it like they did. The Minnesota game, losing 34-7. All you can say is Minnesota got the best of them that day, and then Maryland, beats them by 14. So that's tough losses. They really need to bounce back and win this week because they play Michigan next week. So, and then right after that they play Illinois, and then they have Rutgers, Indiana, and then Penn State at the end of the year. So Michigan State's got to get turned around pretty quick. They got a tough schedule coming up against them. If they lose this game, they can probably won't have any kind of say in the Big 12 or the Big 10 and how it turns out. We'll go to the SEC. Let's go to the Pac-12 first, actually. We have Colorado and California. I think California is just going to kind of run away with this game. Colorado hasn't put up much effort in it this year. They're 0-5, 0-2 in the Big 12 or the Pac-12. They lost to TCU, Minnesota, UCLA, Arizona, Air Force. Anytime you get beat by Air Force by 31, Air Force is a running team, obviously. So if that's not your defensive strength, you're gonna have a hard game. But then you see them play against like TCU, who has a little bit of an air attack, and some West Coast teams in Arizona and UCLA. You got to think that those teams are passing the ball on them, and you got to think that they're just not playing solid defense. I think that in the TCU game, they didn't really pass the ball. That TCU didn't really pass the ball that well. So, they only had 138 passing yards, and while Colorado had 235, and they still lose by 25, they're just failing to convert big plays and get big plays. I just don't think they have a good run defense. Colorado does not, because TCU ran for almost 300 yards on them. We'll check out the Arizona or the Air Force game. I'm sure if TCU can run for 300 on you, then Air Force can run. Yeah, Air Force ran for 435 yards. That's tough, and Colorado had 111 rush yards, so you have a 300-yard difference in just rushing alone. That's not what you want to see at all. Like I said, Air Force doesn't pass the ball hardly at all. They had 1 for 5 passing for 8 yards. When you got a QBR of 13, you're not looking good. And Colorado's quarterback was 5 for 21 with QBR of 4.7. That's just not good. That's just not good football. I think they'll get it turned around eventually, though, up at Colorado. But like I said, I think California just wins this game. And then we got Arizona, Washington. That's going to be a pretty good game. I think it'll be a close start, and then I think one team's going to start pulling away with it. And I think it's going to be Washington. Arizona's just kind of been building back a little bit. They have some decent wins though. They have a win over San Diego State and North Dakota State, who's obviously FCS, but they're a good FCS program. And even if it's a down year for North Dakota State, you still beating a good program. And then they have losses to Oregon, California, and Mississippi State. So they win one, lose one, win one, lose one. I think they might win this one, if they go by their pattern here. But like I said, Colorado, they are what they are. And then Mississippi State, they're a pretty good team. And they unfortunately did lose to them. And then Cal and Oregon both beat them too. Oregon's a pretty decent team. Bo Nix really got turned around against Arizona last week. So I think this could be a competitive game, but I think that Washington is going to win this one. And then we got Stanford, Notre Dame. I think this could be a pretty good game. It's at Notre Dame. I think Stanford's just they're kind of building it back a little bit too this year. They have some decent competition that they've lost to. They lost to number 10 USC, number 18 Washington, number 13 Oregon State by 1 point. And then they beat Colgate, which, beating Colgate, it's good to have a win. That's all I can say. But they have had some pretty good games, some pretty close games with some good teams, and just unfortunately just couldn't put it together. Um, I don't know. I think in all honesty that Stanford isn't a bad team. So if Notre Dame doesn't play them close, that Notre Dame could lose. Notre Dame has given up some big games this year, but I think what it comes down to is just Notre Dame playing Stanford like they're Stanford and not just looking at their record and looking through them or looking around them. I think they just got to go in, play a solid game, and I think they will. I like Notre Dame in this game. The line says 17-point favorite for Notre Dame. I don't know if it's going to be that much of a win. I think Notre Dame probably wins by 10, maybe 17. We've discussed the USC and Utah game. Then we got Washington State and Oregon State. I think this is going to be a really good game, and it's in Corvallis, Oregon. That's a good name. I like that name. I think Oregon State is a solid team. I watched them early on in the year against Boise State, and they beat them by 17. And they went on and beat Fresno State. And they beat Stanford and Montana State, and then they lost to Utah and USC, two solid teams that I like. We discussed them earlier. I think I think the winner of that matchup wins the Pac-12. So losing to both of those teams isn't that significant, I don't think. If they can beat Oregon, they probably win out. If they can beat Oregon and Washington State this week, and then Oregon at the end of the year, which is a rivalry game, and it's at home, so I think they probably have a good shot to beat Oregon there. I really, truly think that Oregon State probably wins this game just because it's at home. Washington State's a good team, but I think Oregon State's just home field advantage and everything's just going to play a part. And Washington State's a good team too. They knocked off Wisconsin when Wisconsin was number 19, second week of the season, and then they lost to Oregon and they lost to USC. I've talked a bunch about both of those teams, so I think that Washington's not a bad team. I just think Oregon State's just a little bit better. They play pretty good defense and they're pretty sound on offense, so I think that that'll be good. Moving on to the SEC, we got Arkansas and BYU. I think that could be a close game. I think it's going to be a really close game. Actually, in fact, the line says it's even, and with an over and under of 67. So they think it's going to be a high-scoring game. That's going to be pretty close, 34-33 or something like that. And it's in Provo, Utah. Another fun name to say, like Corvallis. But I think that, I've watched Arkansas early on. KJ Jefferson is KJ Jefferson. He's good. But BYU did beat Baylor, and they played a tighter game with Notre Dame than most people probably would have figured. And then, they get beat by 21 to Oregon. It is what it is, but at the end of the day, you got to win those games. And Arkansas, they beat Cincinnati, they beat South Carolina, and they beat Missouri State, and then they dropped 3 in a row. But the 3 in a row they're dropping to is 23 Texas A&M, 2 Alabama by 23 points. They lost to Texas A&M by 2, and then they lose at Mississippi State by 13, who was also ranked at that time at 23. I think that Arkansas is going to actually win this game. I just like KJ Jefferson a lot. I think they're going to start figuring it out a little bit on defense. They were kind of allowing a lot of points early on. In every game they've allowed over 23 points in every single game they played. And that's just, even to Missouri State. So I think they got to get their defense figured out just a little bit, and I think they'll be in shape. And I think they're going to do that this week in Provo. I think Arkansas is going to win that game, and then a good matchup for me, anyways, because I really do like this game. I think this is going to be a good game. It's Florida LSU, and it's in Gainesville. It's going to be 80. It's going to be hot and humid, and the crowd's going to be going crazy. I think that LSU is going to go in there, and I think LSU is going to upset them. And I'm not saying this because my wife's an LSU fan. I think LSU is going to go in there, and I think they're going to beat them. And I think it's going to be a really good matchup. I think LSU is just going to finally get it figured out, get over that hump this week, and then just get a good solid win out of it. Florida has a pretty decent schedule, strength of schedule. They lost to Kentucky by 10. They lost to Tennessee by 5. Played a close game when a lot of people didn't think that was going to be as close a game as it was. They beat Utah, who was preseason ranked number 7. A lot of people say preseason rankings don't mean anything. They're just putting a number on a team, But still, Utah is, like I said, I think they're going to win the Pac-12. Florida is a good team, but I truly think that LSU is just going to go in there and they're going to win this game. Their coach is finally thinking. I think he's coming around to the confidence level that he needs to be at. LSU has played Florida State, lost by 1 on a block. Extra point at the end of the game. Then they played Southern, beat the brakes off of them. Played Mississippi State, beat the brakes off of them. Played New Mexico, gave them a shellacking. Played Auburn, beats them by 4, and then they go last week and get torn apart by Tennessee. But Tennessee, like I said, is a good team. I think it's gonna be a good game. Is what I think. Florida did beat or almost beat Tennessee, and Tennessee played a really how can I say this, complete game against LSU, I guess you'd say. But I think that I think it's gonna be a good game. But like I said, I think LSU just got it. And then Mississippi State, Kentucky, we talked about that. We discussed that. We'll go to the Mountain West just for a second. We'll go to the Mountain West. We'll be looking at that. Utah State, Colorado State. I think that Utah State's going to win this game. Line says by 11. New Mexico State. This is going to be the funnest, most boring game probably in the nation. New Mexico is 2-4. New Mexico State is 1-5. This is the hometown teams for me. I think, in all honesty, this is going to be a really close game, is what I truly think. New Mexico State hasn't really played a close game all year except for UTEP and Nevada. UTEP's, 25, 30 miles away. That's kind of a rivalry game. Then they go to the next week, get beat by 59 at Wisconsin. But they do beat Hawaii by 20, but Hawaii's kind of down. They lose to FIU, who was ranked as the worst team in college football. So, I don't know. I think New Mexico's got their program turned around a little bit. Coach G up there is really good. Right now, we just took over as play caller, I believe, for the offense. He's a solid coach. He's a really smart young coach taking that role. He comes from high school ball here in New Mexico. He coached at Rio Rancho's Cleveland High School. They won state last year, and he built a very, very good program in his tenure at Cleveland High. And born and raised in Lovington. And played with Brian Urlacher, the greatest Lobo in history at Lovington when they were both in high school. I think that, in all honesty, I think New Mexico wins this game. I think it could be a blowout. The line says 6.5 favorite for New Mexico. I think New Mexico is just a little bit better team than New Mexico State. I think New Mexico State's going to be down for a couple more years. But I think in the next couple of years, New Mexico is going to be competitive in the Mountain West. We move on to Air Force and UNLV. I like UNLV in this one. It's at home. It's going to be a close game, though. I think it's going to be a pretty good game. This one's going to make some of my friends mad from Fresno, California. But San Jose State playing Fresno State. Fresno State has 1 win on the season. You heard that right. 1 win for Fresno State. Fresno State has played some good teams. Unfortunately for them, they just haven't been able to put it together. But the one game I wanted to discuss is the UConn game. They lost 19-14 to UConn. UConn was looked at as one of the worst teams in college football coming into this game, besides FIU and Hawaii and New Mexico State. And they come in and they win. This was a home game for UConn. So the Bulldogs go on the road and they lose this game. And I really don't think that Fresno State played real bad. They had two interceptions thrown. I do believe their quarterback was hurt for this. I think this is their backup. That's going to play a big part in this game also. I really do want to say that he got hurt against USC. Hold on, let me look. Yeah, Jake Hayner got hurt against USC. So Logan Fife has been playing and spotted him. He's the second string quarterback. I think that this is going to be a competitive game between San Jose State and Fresno State. But I think at the end of the day, San Jose State is just going to be a little more complete team, a little more well-rounded team, and they're just going to, they obviously have their starting quarterback who has had a pretty decent season. He's a pretty good-sized guy too, and he's passed the rock pretty good. His QBR is a little bit down, but he hasn't thrown an interception all year. Only 6 touchdowns, though. You can kind of look at that and say, but I don't think San Jose State's offense is the type of offense where you're going to have, a 5,000-yard passing season. I just don't think that's their brand of football. and that's okay with that. I'm okay with that. You just got to find who you are and keep doing that. But on the season, they don't have a bunch of rushing yards as a team. They don't have a lot of things, but what they do have, I think, is they just play solid football all the way around, and I think that's what they're going to have to do to win this game. And I personally think they will do this. They have pretty good defense for the Mountain West, and I think they come out, I would say, like with a 7-point win, maybe. The line says 8.5-point favorite. So, and then we have Nevada at Hawaii. I think Nevada wins this game. Hawaii's not. I don't hate to dog on anybody, but Hawaii's kind of in a down year right now, and I think that Nevada is looking all right. I don't think they're too bad, actually. I could be wrong. I was trying to look to see who their quarterback was. Huh. Okay. There's a lot of quarterbacks in the Mountain West from Hawaii. I didn't know that. That is interesting. That don't play for Hawaii. So we're gonna go to the American. We had a game yesterday. UCF won 70-13 over Temple. I probably would have picked UCF in that game, but 70-13, I probably would have picked that. On Friday night, we have Navy versus SMU in Dallas at SMU. I think that SMU is going to win this game. I've seen SMU play a couple games this year, and I think it could honestly be a pretty close game. The line says -12.5 favorite for SMU. Could be a little bit better of a game than that, but I don't know. Moving on to Saturday, we got Tulane, South Florida. I think Tulane wins this. Tulane's not a bad football team, and I think it's going to come to fruition that they're not. They beat UMass, Alcorn State, Kansas State, Houston, and East Carolina, who almost beat North Carolina State to start the year. Houston's a pretty good team too. Kansas did beat Houston, and Tech did lose to Houston, just for reference out there. Southern Miss did beat Tulane, though. I think that was kind of a fluke game on their part. I think Tulane's a little better team than that game showed. I did watch that game. I think Tulane wins this game pretty. I think it's going to be pretty lopsided, too. It's in Tampa, Florida. It's going to be hot. So hopefully Tulane, coming from Louisiana, can be prepared for that weather. And then moving on to the late game, we got Memphis, East Carolina. I think this is going to be a great game. I think it's going to be one of the best games of the weekend. Maybe if not LSU, Florida, or Alabama, Tennessee. I think this game's going to be right up there with them. And I think it's going to be pretty close. I think it's going to be one of the closer games of the week. But I like Memphis in this game. I think Memphis is just a little bit more physical than East Carolina State. East Carolina State is a physical team, though. I'm not saying they're not. I just like Memphis in this. Memphis gave Houston as much as a run for their money as they could have. And then the only other loss is to Mississippi State. But I think this is a really good football team, and I think they're about to prove that whenever they go to Greenville, North Carolina, and beat East Carolina. But East Carolina, they lost to Tulane. Like I said, they lost to Navy. They lost to NC State by 1 point. They beat Old Dominion, Campbell, and South Florida. I think that East Carolina is a good team. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be like a 3-4 point game. The line says 5-point favorite for East Carolina. But I think Memphis wins this. Let's see. What else do I want to cover? I don't know a lot of other teams. Oh, well, look at the ACC. I don't know how I missed that. We got Michigan, Virginia Tech. I think this is going to be a solid game. It's going to be a good game. It's going to have a little bit of everything in it. And I think Miami's going to go to Blacksburg, and they're going to win this game. I think it's going to be a close game, though. I think Miami probably wins by a touchdown, maybe 2. 7, 10 points, somewhere in that. And the line says 7-point favorite for Miami. And then we have NC State, Syracuse, already covered them. Clemson, Florida State, already covered that. And then we have North Carolina, Duke. If this was basketball, we'd have the Duke Crazies already camping out at Durham, because this game is a home game for Duke. I think Duke's a decent team. I think they're going to turn around a little bit. They're kind of in the same boat as Kansas. Kansas did beat them, close game late in the fourth quarter. Kansas sealed it off with a interception by Kobe Bryant, which is kind of a crazy stat or crazy thing to think about. Duke and Kansas, both blue blood college basketball teams, and now they're duking it out, and no pun intended, they're duking it out in football. And Duke is driving to go tie up the game, and they fourth down. I think it was like about 4th and 7. They throw the ball, and it's a 50-50 ball, and the cornerback comes down with his name happens to be Kobe Bryant. So the game just kind of wrapped around basketball. You know, Kobe being an absolute legend in basketball, and these two schools being absolutely legendary basketball schools. I think it was kind of crazy to see that come to fruition. It's just kind of a weird thing to see. But I think North Carolina's quarterback, Drake May, is a sleeper for the Heisman. He has played really good football throughout the year. And I think that they're going to play a decently close game for the first half of this. And I think North Carolina State might edge out Duke, but I really want to see Duke win this game. I really do. And I think the line says 7-point favorite for North Carolina. I like both teams there. I like Mac Brown and I like Duke for being Duke. That's all you can ask for, really. So in Conference USA, we have UTSA at FIU. UTSA looked really good at the end of last year. They were really putting it together, and I think they're going to continue to do that this year. They have 2 losses in non-conference play. They're 2-0 in the Conference USA, and I think that they win this game pretty handedly down in Miami against FIU. Then we move. That's on Friday, October 14th at 6 p.m. on CBS Network, Sports Network. And I think that's going to be a decent showing of UTSA, flex their muscles a little bit. And then on Saturday, we have Charlotte UAB. I think UAB wins this game pretty good. UAB is bouncing back from not having a program, just a couple years back. And they're really making a comeback strong at the Conference USA. And then we move on to Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee. I think this is going to be a pretty close game. It's at Johnny Red Floyd Stadium down there in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Say that 10 times fast. Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I think that Middle Tennessee probably wins this game. Line says Western Kentucky, but I like Middle Tennessee in this one. And then we move on to Louisiana Tech at North Texas. I think Louisiana Tech is a pretty decent team for what they are. Law Tech they'll always kind of give you a run for your money, but I like North Texas in this game, and so does the betting line. Then we move on to the afternoon game. We got Rice, Florida Atlantic. I don't really know either one of these teams super good to really comment on them, so we're going to go ahead and take a peek at their schedule. Rice played USC, McNeese, Louisiana, Houston, and UAB. They did beat UAB, who I just complimented. And then Florida Atlantic played Charlotte, beat Charlotte, lost to Ohio, beat Southeastern Louisiana, probably FCS school. UCF, Purdue, and North Texas all gave them an L. I think this is going to be a closer game than what people might predict at first, just on paper, because when I first seen this, I thought FAU would probably win this. I think Rice might go down to Boca Raton, Florida, and win this game. My pick's on Rice here. The line likes Florida Atlantic by 4, but I think this is going to be a pretty close game. So that's kind of it for this week as far as football goes. Now for the second part of this show, we're going to talk a little bit about leather work and stuff that might pertain to that, because that's what I do for a living. That's how I make my day money, as they say. I run a business called Squiggly Cactus Leather Co., based right here out in New Mexico. And, that's just what I've been doing. I've been trying my best at it for about 2 years now. I've been in business. I can make just about anything. And I'll have some more guests on this show, hopefully within the next couple weeks and throughout the future. Maybe we can get this thing really rolling. I can bring some people in. I can get some people chatting with me about it, both on the football side of it and the leatherwork side of it. I got some really good friends on both sides. I got some sports broadcasters. I got some good coaches that are friends of mine, and I have phenomenal leatherwork friends that both live in the area and throughout the country and world. So that's just a little bit about myself, and this is kind of what this show is going to be about. I'm going to try to get 2 episodes out a week, at least 5 to 6 episodes out a month. And, I'm going to try to get a once a week kind of football prediction, talk about sports, hot topics, stuff like that. This is Thursday, probably Sunday. I'll have another one, maybe breaking down some open coaching spots and some stuff like that, and who I think is going to land those spots and who would be the best fit for those spots. So once I get everything a little bit more figured out with this whole podcast thing, I can maybe do that. And that's what I'm looking forward to. If you've stayed this long, I really appreciate you watching, supporting. Leave a like, leave a comment. I want to see who's this reaching. So if this is something that you're interested in, or you have a topic, or you want to be on the show, and you know me, let me know. If you don't know me and you're watching this and you want to be on the show, I'll put my contact information in the description, and you can DM me on Instagram or reach out to me on some sort of social media. All my social media is just Squiggly Cactus Leather Co. And I'll link something in there, and you can reach out to me on there. And if you whether it be football, leather work, or you have something else you want to talk about, like I said, I'm going to be doing some basketball later on when it comes to basketball season. I'm not going to cover NBA. I'm not going to cover really NFL. We might discuss it here and there, but it's not going to be a major topic by any means. If you have any questions, or like I said, you want to help get this thing kind of rolling, or you want to be on the show, just let me know, and I'd be more than happy to help or to work with somebody and get some help from some people. So if you have any ideas, just hit me up, and I'd be willing to help it out and everything. And I think before the end of the year, I'm going to have a special guest. I call him my boss. He is one of the best refs in the state of New Mexico. That's another side job that I have. I am a NFHS registered official for the NMOA through New Mexico to ref high school and anything lower, JV, junior high, football. And I'm trying to start my collegiate career in the CFO. And so I'm going to have some different perspectives on things because I have a different perspective than most people have ever seen. I'll try to get some coaches on, and that's another thing. If you want to ref, you want to coach, now's the time. There's not a single sport that doesn't need a coach. There's not a single sport that doesn't need a ref. So if you've ever thought about it, or if you've ever thought about coaching and you don't know where to start, the best way to learn is know the rules. Know what your players can do. Know what you can do. Know what you can't do. Know what you shouldn't do. Know what it's like to be a young ref, with a lot of pressure in a big game. And I'm not saying when you first start reffing you're going to get big games, but every game is a big game whenever you're first starting out. So if that's something that interests you, hit me up, reach out. I can get you signed up even if you're out of state. I can try to get you in contact with whoever runs your state association, and we can get things rolling on that. And then if you want to coach, there's a lot of coaching positions opened throughout the country, especially in this area. There's a lot of coaches. There's still some spring sports looking for coaches I've seen recently. So if that's something that interests you and you would like to learn more, I can do what I can to help you in any way, then please reach out to me, and I'll try to do what I can. But for now, this is going to be the first episode of the Squiggly Cactus Show. Thank you for sticking along this long. I just like to talk. I'll rant all day. We're about at 45 minutes. This is probably about as long as they'll be from now on. I'm going to try to get them on Spotify. I'm going to try to get them on Apple Music. They'll be on YouTube for now. Thank you for sticking it out with me. And so long, people. Thank you.